The smell of floor wax and polished wood hung in the air as the audience settled into their seats. A silver military commendation folder rested on the table in front of me. My father stared at it for a moment, then laughed. "Colonel Rebecca Hayes wants to lecture us about responsibility now," he said loudly enough for everyone in the banquet hall to hear. "That's rich." A few people chuckled. My younger brother Tyler smiled into his wine glass. The annual Hayes Family Foundation banquet had always belonged to them. Their money, their reputation, their stage. For years they had treated me like the quiet daughter who disappeared into the military because she couldn't succeed in business. Now my father stood at the podium, in front of 200 guests, and announced that I was attempting to steal family assets through a fraudulent legal claim. His voice echoed through the ballroom. His confidence never wavered, because he thought he already knew everything. What he didn't know was that the folder sitting in front of me contained documents neither he nor his attorneys had ever seen. What he didn't know was that every move he had made over the last 8 years had already been mapped. What he didn't know was that the woman he had dismissed his entire life had spent 22 years learning how to win without speaking. The applause faded, the room waited, and my father had no idea what was about to happen. I grew up in a house where achievement only mattered when it belonged to someone else. My father, Richard Hayes, owned a successful construction company outside Savannah, Georgia. Tyler was the golden child. I was the afterthought. I still remember the smell of sawdust in Dad's office when I was 12 years old. I'd won a statewide academic competition. The certificate was folded carefully in my backpack. Dad glanced at it for less than 2 seconds. "That's nice." Then he turned back toward Tyler's baseball statistics. Another memory, 16 years old. Summer heat pressing against the windows. I was accepted into a leadership program sponsored by the state. Tyler had been suspended from school for fighting. At dinner, my father spent 40 minutes defending Tyler. Nobody asked about my acceptance letter. Nobody noticed when I left the table. The last memory hurt the most. My 21st birthday. Rain tapped against the restaurant windows. My parents canceled dinner because Tyler needed help covering gambling debts. I sat alone with a slice of cake and a phone that never rang. That night something changed. Not because I stopped loving them. Because I stopped chasing them. There is a difference. A painful one. The military wasn't an act of rebellion. It was an escape route. I joined the Army because it was the first place that evaluated people based on performance instead of family politics. No favoritism, no excuses, no golden children, only standards, only results. Years later, after Ranger School, deployments, command assignments, and promotions, I stopped expecting validation from home. I built my own life, my own purpose, my own family. Meanwhile, my father continued treating me like an outsider. When my mother passed away unexpectedly, he took control of the family foundation and the trust she had established decades earlier. I was told not to worry about the details. Tyler handled those now. That should have been my warning, and instead I stayed silent. I stayed focused. I stayed away. Because some battles aren't worth fighting until they're ready. The desert heat felt like opening an oven door directly into your face. Sand worked its way into everything. Boots, equipment, skin. Sleep became a rumor. Comfort became a memory. Those years taught me something my father never understood. Pressure reveals truth. It doesn't create it. During one deployment, our convoy was struck by an improvised explosive device outside a remote operating area. Communication systems failed. Visibility dropped. People panicked. I didn't, not because I was fearless. Because fear isn't useful once the decision has to be made. Captain Elena Torres stood beside me that day. Years later, she would become one of my closest friends. After the operation, she looked at me and said something I never forgot. "Everyone gets loud when things go wrong. You get quiet." At the time, I shrugged. But she was right. The military taught me patience, documentation, preparation, discipline. Most importantly, it taught me that evidence beats emotion every single time. Compared to deployment zones, family manipulation felt familiar. Compared to life and death decisions, legal intimidation felt small. Compared to military investigations, my father's lies were amateur work. I just needed time. Time was something I had learned to use. The first warning came 18 months before the banquet. An attorney reviewing estate documents noticed inconsistencies inside the family foundation. Numbers didn't align. Transfers lacked explanations. Authorizations appeared under circumstances that raised questions. Nothing dramatic, just wrong. The kind of wrong that grows larger the longer you examine it. I hired a forensic accounting team. Quietly, no announcements, no accusations, no confrontations. Weeks became months, months became evidence. The deeper investigators dug, the uglier it became. Funds intended for educational scholarships had been redirected. Foundation assets had been transferred into companies connected to Tyler. Administrative fees appeared from nowhere. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, carefully hidden, carefully structured, carefully stolen. When my father learned I was reviewing records, he called immediately. His voice carried that familiar mixture of authority and irritation. "Rebecca, you're creating problems where none exist." I thanked him for his concern, nothing more. A month later, he escalated. A family dinner, 5 relatives. One attack. He accused me of being paranoid. He suggested military service had made me suspicious of everyone. I listened. I ate my meal. I never raised my voice. The following month, he escalated again. Lawyers, threat letters, demands, warnings, claims that challenging Foundation leadership would destroy the family's reputation. Still calm, still patient, still documenting. Each attack revealed something new. Each threat produced another piece of evidence. Each mistake moved him closer to the edge. By the time he filed a formal lawsuit accusing me of attempting to seize control of the Foundation illegally, I already possessed everything necessary to destroy his case. He simply didn't know it yet. The lawsuit triggered mandatory disclosures. That was his mistake. Not his first. His last. If you have ever given everything to someone who never once stopped to ask if you were okay, hit that like button. Let's remind each other that our silence was never weakness. It was preparation. The banquet arrived 6 months later. My father believed public pressure would force me to back down. He arranged speeches, guests, business partners, community leaders, a public stage. The perfect place for humiliation. Or so he thought. Standing beneath crystal chandeliers, he spoke confidently. He described me as confused, misguided, influenced by outside advisors. Then he looked directly at me. "Rebecca is chasing conspiracy theories because she doesn't understand how business works." Several heads nodded. Tyler smirked. My father smiled. His attorneys sat nearby, relaxed, certain. The attack continued for nearly 10 minutes. Every sentence carried the same message. Rebecca is wrong. Rebecca is emotional. Rebecca has nothing. Finally, he finished. The room settled. People looked toward me, waiting, expecting a defense, an argument, a speech. Instead, I stood, picked up the silver folder, walked calmly toward the stage. No rush, no anger, no hesitation. My father folded his arms. "Well?" he asked. I handed the folder to the Foundation's independent board chairman. Then I returned to my seat. The chairman opened it. Silence spread gradually across the ballroom. The first document was a forensic audit. The second contained banking records. The third was a signed statement from the Foundation's former financial controller. The fourth was a federal investigative notice. The chairman looked up. His face had lost all color. My father frowned. "What is this?" I answered with 6 words. "Everything you hoped stayed hidden. Nothing moved. Nothing." The chairman cleared his throat, then spoke. "These records indicate approximately $4.8 million in unauthorized transfers linked to companies controlled by Richard Hayes and Tyler Hayes." The room stopped breathing. Tyler's smile vanished first. My father's came second. The chairman continued. "Dates, amounts, authorizations, evidence." Each sentence landed like a hammer. Still, my father tried one final attack. "This is ridiculous. Fabricated. She's trying to destroy us." A brief silence followed. I looked directly at him. The same man whose approval I had spent decades chasing. The same man who believed volume could replace truth. And I said the only thing that mattered. "You taught me exactly how to survive without you." The chairman wasn't finished. Neither was the evidence. Because there was a second document, one nobody expected. Not even Tyler. My mother's handwritten letter. Stored with her attorney. Released only if evidence of Foundation misconduct ever emerged. The letter named me sole successor trustee. Not Tyler, not my father. The room shifted, people stared. My father's hand trembled, only slightly. Enough. My mother's final instructions were simple. If Foundation assets were ever endangered, authority transferred immediately to Colonel Rebecca Hayes. Effective upon verified misconduct. My father sat down slowly. His voice disappeared. Tyler looked like someone had switched off the lights behind his eyes. The collapse wasn't dramatic. It never is. It happened in tiny details. A shaking hand, a lowered gaze, a missing answer, a man realizing the future he imagined no longer existed. The banquet ended without applause. Outside, cold air moved across the parking lot. I stood beside my car and listened to distant traffic. No celebration, no victory speech, no revenge. Just relief. A weight I had carried for years finally gone. I drove alone. The dashboard lights glowed softly in the darkness. For the first time in a long time, I felt quiet inside. For years, I had believed my worth depended on being recognized by the people who refused to see me. But my father never understood something important. Strength built in silence does not disappear because someone ignores it. It grows. While he measured power through control, I measured it through preparation. While he collected influence, I collected discipline. While he underestimated me, I became someone he could never manipulate. The truth is simple. People who dismiss you often mistake your silence for weakness. What they fail to understand is that silence can also be construction. And one day the structure is finished. If you have ever been the person in a room who was dismissed before you could speak, if you have ever watched someone reduce your entire life to a single convenient label, I want you to know something. Their opinion was never your identity. Their blindness was never your limitation. Keep building, keep preparing, keep moving. One day the truth will walk into the room carrying its own evidence. Leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Stories like this aren't rare. They're just rarely told all the way through. Subscribe and stay with us. There are more stories waiting.